God, we're rolling. So then,
Oh my God.
so then I can say, you know, hello, I'm Steve Kim. Welcome to the Bass Basement. I'm
Yes.
today with Chris Symer. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Steve.
So
it's that easy? Wow.
it's that easy.
I always thought this Hollywood kind of thing would be.
Well, speaking of Hollywood, I always ask people where they're from and how they got started, and so you've been here forever. You know, I can
20 years.
attest for 20 years.
Not ever.
Anyway, where are you from?
I was born in Inglewood, California, the hood.
I know the spot.
Yeah.
Inglewood.
Inglewood, the home of the Fabulous Forum.
Yes. All right. All right.
And
we would call that South Central.
yeah. Back then, my grandparents lived in Gardena. So did my folks. They lived right next door to my grandparents, who had the property that used to be a chicken ranch. They had a chicken ranch back then in Gardena.
Wait a minute. Gardenia Chicken Ranch is like, what year was this?
Well, my grandparents. I was born in '59. I don't know how long they were there before I was around, but my mom, I think, as a kid, was there on that chicken ranch.
Wow.
So yeah, then it became a hospital parking lot. So
Like so much of LA.
yeah, exactly. It's not even close to what it was then. And then lived in Alhambra, and then Santa Barbara, or suburb of Santa Barbara, Goleta, is where, when I was 10, that's where I kind of grew up.
And now, was it public school and a music program in Inglewood, or how did all this get started for you?
Okay, well the fun story. Well, okay, we'll back up before it was fun. I played accordion, a little bit.
Full disclosure, so did I.
Whee!
Okay.
Before that, I played trumpet a little bit. Had an uncle who was a studio French horn player, played in the LA Phil, did studio session work, and he gave us some lessons. Learned a little bit about the trumpet. This was before moving to Santa Barbara, and then moved to Santa Barbara, Goleta, and played accordion for about 6 months. It was heavy and hard to carry around. But the bass happened because my brother, 3 years older than I am, wanted to play electric guitar. So I wanted to play electric guitar. It's like, I was 10 and a half or 11 years old. Yeah. Well, so my brother tells me, this is just the best. He says, two guitar players can't play anything together, but a guitar player and a bass player could be in the same band. And I was like, oh yeah, being in a band with my big brother, this is going to be awesome. And so I said, what's a bass? I had,
Yeah,
and
that's the next question.
we had a family friend we called Uncle Butch. We'd go visit Uncle Butch, and he had a couple guitars in his closet, and one of them was red, and it was a bass. My brother tells me, Uncle Butch's red guitar? I was like, oh man, that was my favorite one, the red one. He said, yeah, that's a bass. So I started playing bass, and that's how that happened.
Just you and your brother.
Well, he's an auto mechanic. He, he went a little different way. He's, playing recreationally now.
Mm-hmm.
He bought guitars and likes playing the guitar. But I ended up, through not making any choice to do anything else, basically. I mean, I've got progressively more involved with music over the years.
Mm-hmm.
But high school, I was surfing and playing volleyball, and it wasn't until my senior year that I got in a band at all. I got in the jazz band, and that's why I started acoustic bass, because they had a kid playing electric bass already. He was a senior also. I was like, well,
So,
I'll play upright.
relatively speaking, all this came a little later.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
So you weren't playing bass at 5.
Oh, heck no.
Yeah.
No. I know there are people who were, but yeah, it definitely didn't start until later. And like I said, it just kept getting to be more. And I ended up being a bass player back then. You know how it was. You ended up working. That's where those jokes come from. It was true.
Well, okay. I usually don't ask about equipment and so forth, but you have several unusual stories that right away identified you to me as somebody who didn't run with the crowd, So
Right.
So I have to ask you about these. So,
Okay.
So first of all, before we talk about your double bass,
Yeah.
I want to hear about the Ken Parker electric bass.
Oh, the
that
fly.
the fly bass that you used to have because it,
Yeah.
well, okay, your experience was
sold
mixed with it, but you and Steve Swallow are the only two people I can name that ever owned one,
I
right?
wish I still had it. I loved that thing. Um,
So for those of us who don't know, that was a basswood, was it, with an exoskeleton?
well, that one. By the time they did this one, I think his was that way. The neck was still that way. It was like carbon fiber skin on top of a softer wood
Mm-hmm.
core, but the body was a bunch of laminates, I believe. And the nice thing, like this side was really thin, and this side thicker. It kind of fit your body really nicely. It wrapped around.
Yeah,
a
it
little
looked
bit.
kind of odd, but I heard it was ergonomically
Felt
really.
really great.
Yeah.
And it played. The reason I got rid of it is I needed the money to buy something else. I have that Elric.
Mm-hmm.
I sold the Parker for the Elric because the Elric was more versatile. But the thing the Parker did, it did really well.
So
and I missed that.
So if all things were equal, you'd have a Parker.
Oh, I would. I'd have that red one
And,
that I had. Yeah.
and before I ask you about the double bass, then you mentioned that the double bass came from high school stage band. And
Yeah. Well, yeah. Playing in the big band in high school. That's what motivated me to start playing. But then I went and was studying with a classical teacher who's still my main mentor. This woman in Santa Barbara, Nancy Chase. Wonderful teacher, wonderful lady, really nice bass player. She's taught hundreds of people. And I went for several years thinking I wanted to be an orchestral player. And
Mhm.
so I went to Santa Barbara City College. I was playing in their big band and orchestra, and UCSB's big band and orchestra. Then I transferred to Cal State Northridge and was just orchestra.
And that explains
what I wanted to do.
one time I went to hear you play, and you were bowing your solos.
Oh, I do that once in a while.
Yeah, you were doing it quite a bit when I heard you. And
Well, we played some gigs together. Remember with
yeah,
those were fun.
right out there as a matter of
Analog
fact.
honking device though too with
That's right, analog honking device.
Yes, that was
Right.
fun.
Now you tune your bass in fifths,
Yes.
so I'd like you to talk about that a little bit. How did that come about, and then the particulars of it.
Okay. I was listening to and really enjoying some of the more odd players like Glenn Moore, who was not in fifths at the time, but he had a low C, a D, and then a high C, 2 octaves above it. And his sound was just so different. I thought, that's really neat to just go do a thing, you know. And he had played in fifths some, and there are some recordings of him in fifths as well. Joel Quarrington, classical player in Canada, just retired from the National Arts Orchestra in the last year or so, was in fifths. I was listening to his solo records. And of course, Red Mitchell, being the most well-known jazz guy, was in fifths. I was playing at the time with Roger Kellaway a bit, and he had played with Red towards the end of Red's life. There were some duo recordings. And I was like, I switched to fifths because of those influences, and I'd been dreaming about it. Like, you know, I'd go to sleep and I'd be thinking, where would those notes be? Where would those notes be? And in fourths, I felt like I was kind of developing some things, but then I'd go hear somebody and I'd like, oh, those things are already completely developed. Like, that person's doing all the stuff I was fantasizing about, you know?
So now, fifths, what made things? Obviously they look different.
Yeah.
And they sounded different then.
Yeah. It prevented me. I mean, suddenly you don't have access to the things that sat well on the bass before.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, some of those simple things in fourths are hard to play in fifths. But I wanted that. I wanted to be forced out of that box, you know.
So you really spent a lot of time rethinking and listening for your own kind of thing here.
Well, that's one way of phrasing it, but in some sense, I think it was listening for the bass's thing.
Okay.
As opposed to my own. Like
I'll go for that.
Right.
Too.
Like, I don't want to impose my idea on the instrument. I want the instrument to be telling me something.
It was telling you, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, okay, you can't just do this anymore. But what can you do? It's like, and you listen to it and you're like, oh, that sounds nice.
And
So-
could you show me just what some normal things to look like?
Well, sure.
In this tune?
Yeah, but here's the dumb thing. It's if you're trying to play the same lines, if you're transcribing things and doing all that, it's a pain.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're just doing this shuffle blues thing, you've got to shift. Because from here, you're on the fifth, you got to go up a whole step. You can only go here, and now you got to get there for the octave or there for the octave. So there's a lot of moving around.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're making things up, the one thing people think it's alien and it's so different, and it's really not as hard as people think. And they say there's more shifting, but these three strings, the top three strings, are still a G, a D, and an A. Yours is G, D, A, mine's G, D, A. But any chord tone that's under your hand on those three strings is under mine. It's just if I'm on the root here, the third's not up here, it's down here. What used to be an octave is a tenth.
Uh-huh.
So you have that all under your hand, which is a nice thing. An octave is still first finger and fourth finger, but instead of this way, it's this way. If you play it in tune, it sounds better. But
So the positions are still contain harmony, but
Yes.
but the look is different.
look, yeah, and yeah, I mean, there's notes under your fingers in all the places there were notes. It's just the notes are different ones. Right? But it's not like, oh, what? You don't have to relearn that much.
And like
But you get a low C, so it's nice.
and like a lot of players, you have a mixed set of strings here.
Well, I do now.
What do you got going there?
Well, to the Tomastic Red Mitchell set on the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
for the bottom two, is just kind of a default setting. I had the Red Mitchell set all the way across
And
until
the Red Mitchell set are designed for
Spyrocor's, yeah, and named after Red Mitchell for his fifth
Sure.
tuning. They made them, designed them with reds out. I bought a 6-string Warwick Alien acoustic bass.
Whoa.
I almost brought it. It's super fun, and I put the Labella tape wounds on it, and it has a funky intonation things a little bit, but it makes it more acoustic sounding. It's
All right.
it's fun.
Now, speaking of fun, what
Okay.
are you doing these days?
What am I doing these days? You mean musically, or just
Well-
for fun?
Well, whatever. Are you playing any performances out that
Oh,
we
yeah.
should tell people about?
Yeah, but by the time you throw this up, those performances will be done. Right?
This might be up tomorrow.
Oh, boy. Well, then, if we could go back in time, I just played with John A. Kendrick, who I love, at the North Bend Jazz Walk. Any gigs with John A., there's a few coming up. She got a Chamber Music America grant and wrote some stuff for like string quartet plus her normal quartet. There'll be some rehearsals for soon. I don't know when a concert date is for that, but she's fantastic, wonderful. Bill Anshell playing up at like North City Bistro with the Peru Trio. We went to Peru with Jeff Bush and Bill, and we have some Peruvian tunes that Bill arranged, and as well as Bill's originals. That's always fun. Dan Kramlich's trio, the Grunge Trio, plays 90s grunge stuff. But Max Wood, Dan Kramlich, acoustic bass, drums, and piano, and that's a ball.
All right.
Yeah, I like all those gigs. Those
And
are
is
fun.
that just coming up just here?
That's like this whatever Wednesday date. That's the 8th, June 8th.
Today is the 6th.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right.
Supposedly we're at Kaluna on the 8th. Yes.
And now you're also teaching, so
Jazz Night School.
how do you shoehorn that in with this kind of schedule? Right?
Well, I had to sub out the last 2 Tuesdays of Jazz Night School because I have rehearsals with this choir thing that I'm doing a gig with.
And are you doing a individual instruction as well?
I do some. I mean, I'm happy to. I like it. It can be really fun and rewarding, but I don't focus on trying to get students.
If someone wanted to get a hold of it, how do you prefer that they do that?
I'm on Facebook. That
Okay.
works. but I'm not. I don't have a website. I don't
But we can find you.
do. Yeah, I hope.
We
You
can
know, if
find
you
you.
want to bad enough, you can find me. It's not that hard. Enough. You just ask around.
Let's play something.
Okay, let's play something.
I'm Steve Kim with Chris Symer, coming to you from the base basement. So thanks, Chris.
Sure
Been
thing,
good
Steve.
being with you,
Been
man.
fun.
We'll see you next time.
Been too long since we hung out.
Yeah, about 20 years.